Bueno, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. We've had a myriad of colleagues speaking before me, so one feels very responsive. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Wuiwatch project, Ivaspe, and everyone involved in this project. Thank you for inviting us. Truth be told, something has happened to us this year, and want it or not, it has made a difference with regard to everything that has happened to us until now. In fact, myself, 10 years ago, when we started with this project, we didn't know David Caballero, Raúl Quírez, Luis Mario, many other people who we've met in the last 10 years. And they have been very valuable to us. And I was speaking with David the other day when we were preparing the report for this case. If today I had to design the defense project for this residential development with a specific fire, if we had to redesign it again, probably the result would have nothing to do with the previous one, because we've learned a great deal. So thank you all for your contribution in the last 10 years. I remember when I met David, it was a meeting organized by Javier de Vicente, and Jaime was also there. And much water has flowed under the bridge since then. Actually, not that much water, as we had a drought. But I'd like to start by saying, what is CIDE Info, which is defense system for forest fires? And with this trans-scale approach, which is a concept that we use together with Elsa Pastor, WUI dimensions is just not is a multi-dimension problem which we should approach from different areas. So in the last 10 years we've used multivariable solutions, and I'd like to stop here to thank my team who might be watching us through YouTube, and thanking them for the work they've done. We are leading the project, we are the face of the project, but they are there, and we work on different levels. And we ate humble pie after these fires, because we realized there were many things we didn't know, and we learned suddenly about many things. So I will speak about the Carcaixent 2016 fire. I live nearby. I'm from nearby Carcaixent. That was the worst fire I've ever lived, and I will try to propose some suggestions and some ideas arising from this fire experience. CIDE Info is a defense system. We don't want to extinguish the fire. Since the very beginning, with our successes and errors, we've tried to develop a tool that could help the team to avoid risking their lives when there is a direct impact against a residential development. I'm sure we all know people who've lost colleagues, and David and I speak about it. We in this country, we never learn. We need dead people to gain awareness of things. So we've developed this based on 4 line of works, 4 points. We like to speak about efficient planning as opposed to optimistic planning. For example, the city council will draft a fire prevention plan with a budget of 2 million. Look, this is totally useful. So that's why we say optimistic versus efficient planning. And then we have forestry, we have pyro gardening as well, to prevent your house from burning, and then infrastructure, water cannons. And this is something we mentioned back at the office. Sometimes we look like plumbers because we are installing water cannons. But anyway, and then the essential side is education and training. of our teams. Creating communities. One of the main reasons of our success when defending this nucleus comes from the community of owners behind us and our work of 10 years. Then we see that the regional government in Catalonia proposes a proactive attitude, and this is what we did. We tried to create proactive approaches instead of reactive approaches. This is a Spanish patent. We've invested a huge deal on this, so you have to pay a great deal of money to obtain such a patent. And then we have a collective defense system trying to defend a population center. And on this basis, we've been working on a different scale. We went to mesoscale to microscale with a domestic system, for example. And I'll try to play some videos. This is the Torrent Valencia fire prevention system. Here, under this pine forest, there's people living. And the city council asked us to please not cut down any trees, because it could, some people consider it as an environmental attack. So we are dealing with secondary areas to reduce the intensity of fire, to bring about opportunities to the team so that they control the fire. Now you hear the impact of water. We are launching 1,000 liters per minute at 6 bars of pressure. And the deposit was very powerful with 8 million liters. So we tried to adapt. We are very resilient people, forest engineers. If we don't have that much water, well, we can do another intervention. Every tower has a water hydrant providing 1,000 liters per minute. And from this, we created a domestic version for protecting houses. This is also a short video. This is adapted for a specific house. Sometimes the owners don't have the option that the whole residential development has these systems, so we create self-protection chassis like a pump, and then we manage the surrounding vegetation, and then we use the water from a swimming pool with 36,000 liters and with portable pumping units. So we are providing solutions that wouldn't be there otherwise. And then the last video, this one you have already seen it, so we can claw back some time. But I should obviously clarify, we're a company and we need to sell our stuff. Our system is yet another tool. I love this idea of caixa de eines, of tool set, and this is another tool. So in the end, we are trying to create a defense line for the firefighting team. As an important achievement is that we were recognized by the United Nations for the integral defense of the WUI. And this is because our system allows for long-term planning. When the Carcaixent fire occurred, we knew that our intervention wasn't just about defending the perimeter, but also the fire brands that could occur inside the residential development. So this helped a great deal when allocating resources. So this is long-term planning before fire happens, obviously. That's why forest engineers have enough knowledge to foresee this. And even though we made some mistakes, that for example fuel breaks, due to lack of maintenance, the type of fuel was worse there than afterwards than before. So the model was worse due to lack of maintenance. But even though it helps us contain the fire. So all these can be implemented beforehand. The portable version forces you to run around to implement it very quickly, and there's obviously use of resources, of staff, but it's best to have a first line monitor than a person. So what has been designed for? So that we have an active defense system like in an industry. Here you could see in this room there is water hydrant, fire extinguisher, but this is very difficult to implement in forest areas because who should pay for it, which is another issue for debate. So we tried to increase the amount of water available. In the Mediterranean, any residential center, 50% of the houses could have a swimming pool. So we are talking about a great mass of water. Why can we use that water if there is a fire? Sometimes it's not that easy. So we are trying to provide support. And then we're trying to prevent damages. In lost situations, for example, the head of raving, something that happened in the Canary Islands where the roads are a bit tricky. Then improving working conditions and safety conditions for the team, and then to reduce the resources which are needed. For example, in our case, we reduced it from 3 teams and 3 vehicles to a single one, and then we should also finish with some myths. This is from 2005, a wooden house with an experimental burning. It's a wooden house, as I said. Here comes the front. What do you think? Did the house burn or not? Place your bets. There's plenty of science and knowledge in this room. Come on. I'm sure there will be diverging opinions. We see some ignition on the structure, but surprisingly, we keep launching water, but the structure didn't burn down. If this was an express fire, instead of express fire, it would have been a slow fire. Obviously, the house would have burned. Secondly, water had some additives improving its effects. So depending on fire conditions, the same system could be more or less effective. Portable unit. This is the Palma Island in the Canary Islands. This is a head of raving in Gran Canaria. Another raving in La Palma. And these are different tests. So at the end of the day, we tried to understand this complex issue and to act accordingly. The WUI is a complex place with many variables, and currently administrations, local administrations and even owners, because we put the blame on the administrations, but owners have a great deal of responsibility. And their response is not right. And we tend to give easy solutions. For example, let's create a fuel break. I had stupid things in the recent Xavia fire. Like if we had an important, if we had a 15-meter long fuel break, this wouldn't have happened. Why not 30 or 60 or 80 meters, depending on the fuel load and a series of parameters? The width could be one or a different one. And we are not tackling the root of the problem. The problem goes beyond this. It has to be with socio-economic and cultural changes, and you don't change this overnight. And then we have people. People we work for. This is just a gentleman in Cortes de Payar doing self-protection. This is facing the west wind. The wind is coming up. There were some fallen pine trees, and then it was this guy in sports clothes, very flammable clothes, by the way. And well, he was risking his life in a theoretically evacuated area. We tend to think that our houses don't burn. This is La Palma. Look, they do burn. It depends where it is and the conditions. So from our team, we try to add a different perspective. We try to approach from a complex situation analysis. And going back to the trans-scale approach proposed by David, we try to act at different levels. So there is preventive work so that we have proactive attitude and we can tackle the root of the problem. There is obviously an environmental reason. The forest has been neglected, and before there was forestry, wood was reused, resins were reused, and this has to do also with pyro gardening. There are some areas we cannot be watering in the south of Alicante, where there are water restrictions, irrigation restrictions. Obviously we cannot be watering for the whole day. And then there is environmental damage and this economic dimension. And I was amazed about this figure of 37 million that you mentioned this morning. And with so much money, with 150 euros, your fire prevention policy could be great. And then what's the price of a person? Insurance company telling us? And then we have the social dimension. When we speak about social dimension, I like to play this video from Galicia, northwest of Spain. This is a video from Pedro Armeste and their team. It's an intense model. We have the firefighters running and getting rid of the hose. Obviously they have an audience, and this is a totally different kettle of fish. So look at this guy, please. This guy is part of the solution or the problem? It's an important part of the problem. Of course, when you see the firefighting running around and saying we are all going to die, it doesn't help. But this is pasture land, and when fire gets here, you'll have a problem. How do you deal with this? Especially this. Here, this is we see two worlds living together. This person is worried about his farm. This guy is threatening them with reporting them to the police. Then we have aircrafts, discussion, quarrels. My home, my house, my house. Well, anyway. When we are focusing on this problem, we are not tackling the fire itself. So at the end of the day, firefighters need to be psychologists, communicators, and many other things. And they are just firefighters. They don't need to take all the blame and all the responsibility. And then we have the technical dimension. We speak about research and development, new technologies. We try to propose integral systems. We would be here, but we would need to work on other dimensions. Otherwise, water cannons are useless. If there is no training, environment management, education, we have an infrastructure or more teams, more hydrants is useless. It will not solve the problem. Mario was explaining this morning the kilowatts per meter, and that's fine. We could invent something new to be more efficient, but with the landscape we have, if it remains the same, what can we do? So we work with the self-protection triangle. We adapted it from the prevention one. So it's having hoses, water cannons instead of buckets. And then preparing simulations. And we try that people we are trying to protect become our allies and not our enemies. So in the last decade, we've proposed several ideas. We've worked with the owners, trying to involve all stakeholders, all agents. This is a workshop in Carcaixent in Valencia from last year. We are working with the local police, with the municipal specialists, with civil protection volunteers. These victims here need to know that they are potential victims and they live in a dangerous residential development. So you should be prepared. So we've carried out interviews and research to see what's the perception of risk. Even though the perception of risk can be really high, people are not willing to take actions. So we did simulations. This is Caldera Taburiente, coordinating firefighters with the site info system. And then eventually we elaborate the self-protection plan so that there is a first line of defense so that the firefighters can work on a second line. So going back to the Carcaixent fire, this is a picture from the afternoon. Fire broke out with a strong wind. With the worst wind in Valencia, and there was a simultaneous fire in Bolbaite. And there were multiple sources. Weather conditions were not favorable. And then we had a self-protection plan from 2009 with several canyons protecting the perimeter, acting as a line of defense. And then we were not so worried about impacts here, but about the fire brands inside the urban area, because this is the only way out of the residential development, and this is a very dense and wooden area and with plenty of scrub. This is the view of the area. This is the anchor point, the line of defense, and then here we have the impact. And we adapted the water deposit to have the fire prevention system. We implemented 2 pumps, but there was just one, and the system wasn't enough to defend the whole perimeter. We couldn't control the water level, so we ran out of water midway through, and we were trying to generate this defense system. With the fuel break is one thing. If we have a fuel break with a worse model, as is pine forest here, then it's another kettle of fish. So in some areas, fire managed to enter the urban area. These pictures are from the operative 6 hours before the impact. And at Wuiwatch, we tried to create a reconstruction as credible as possible to see how fire was behaving during the night when there was the impact. And I will play a little video. Probably it was some of you who recorded this video. I got it through WhatsApp. If you know the author, please let me know and I will give him the credits. Obviously, we see aggressive behavior. There was plenty of wind, people trying to protect their homes, high level of risk, working at night. Obviously, people were extremely exposed here when working. I would like to think that these houses were empty. Anyway, the system was triggered 6 hours before, and we have a timeline for the reconstruction. So we have the first warning, the resource allocation up to until 2 a.m. and we see 3 different impacts: first, second, and third. Luckily, we had a 3 orange field here, and these didn't burn down, as they were. It was kind of a flame retardant area. We have several images from the area. We have a reconstruction from before and after. This is the first impact at 12:30. This is the line of defense. Here we have a military emergency unit truck, and now we see the fire crossing over the ravine, and this is the valley, and now is changing over to the other side. So reconstruction of water canyons impacts. The 23 house is where you can see the floor structure being burned, but not the but the top side didn't burn, and we have 2 water canyons, one here, one there. And the lady evacuating this house told us that she evacuated with an umbrella and her niece on the other hand, and they left the house feeling more confident. So fire spread around here, and this was closed in the project, but we didn't close it because we were told that Carcaixent, a bank, was going to build here, and this was wrong because fire got us around the back. But luckily, it entered a zone with a fuel load, and according to our data, when it got through here, there was no intervention because the soil wasn't removed. So we could determine the water used in each sector. The sector with the least water had 90,000 liters of water, which is a humongous amount of water. We need to improve efficiency. And then you have the runoff here. Areas with the most water is here with the lowest degree of severity, but you can see the high severity here. You can find the report online, and to conclude, this is the picture before the intervention, before we started working 10 years ago, and this is the current situation after the first perimeter strip. It's quite clean, as you can see. And this is 3 years before, in 2016. You see the towers here, lack of maintenance. And this is the result. This house here is this one here. This forest mass here was burned on the surface, but not on the crowns. There were people working here. So we tried to bring it down to fire extinguishing levels. And we knew that polyethylene burns if it's not full of water. And then we have chlorine polyethylene, and then with water cooling through the pipe, we managed to improve this area. If there was load, it would have been more difficult. So when we cut it down, there was no water. The only damage was inside. The only damage inside the residential development was this cypress tree, and then there was some protected area. And we see the house in the low area. This was burned, but also because water couldn't get to here. So we have learned that we need to learn more about water distribution, and we have also learned that many secondary seeds of fire didn't spread because firebrands would go to the same places as our water drops. So this helped. This resulted in firebrands having not a big impact. People working in Alcira were asked whether they would like to leave, and they answered that they wanted to stay because they thought they could keep working. So we see all this area now is completely burnt down. The house, we see the LPG deposit here. You see another section here, another pictures here. And I would like to finish with a video. This is drone footage. You can see the water cannon here and the perimeter strip and the condition of the area. You see all the monitors. Carles was there, and there were reactivations of the fire afterwards. This is the cypress tree forest that was burned. And at the end of the day, we've learned that potency without control is useless. So no matter how much water you use, if you don't use it properly or at the right point, in the right place, in the right manner, is absolutely useless. And an important thing, I'm asked very often, this is not an economic problem. We've invested in Carcaixent during the last 10 years in Carcaixent with 300,000 euros more or less, with 50% being public. We've protected 2,500 people, and if we divide the money, we get 584 euros per owner. And if we divide by year, is 65 euros per year per owner. So come on, it's really worth it to take measures, to implement measures beforehand. So is it reasonable that people pay 100 euros for the safety in interface areas? I would like to conclude with some conclusions, obviously. This is the worst case scenario we could think of. Except of entering here, he would enter over here, but the conditions were clear. And we also dream with residential developments that become an opportunity instead of a threat. And we are working as a company and technical team, working in the industry for the last 15 years. We shouldn't be quarreling with owners, but this is part of our job. It's part and parcel. I guess the PowerPoints will be shared online by David. Here you have the link to the full report and just a reflection or two quotes. Experience, as Aldous Huxley put it, as the British author of A Brave New World, experience is not what happens to a man, it is what a man does with what happens to him. That with this report we try to show our successes and errors, and we try to learn collectively. But of course, if you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got.